سلام اللي كان سابقا مقابل الأرض ثم مقابل فك ارتباط استراتيجي، اليوم ما ثمنه؟ استعادة الشرعية الدولية لسوريا مرهونة فعلا باتفاق سلام؟
A long way from Israel considering a trade-off of land for peace.
ترامب فتح الباب. سؤال الأهم اليوم هو من سيدخل منه.
The United States still has some demands on President Shara. What do we do about the Shebaa farms? And Assad said, no, there is no role for Lebanon here. This land is Syrian. Hezbollah will evolve into a regular Lebanese political party. This fellow Assad is nothing particularly special, but we have saved him.
فشل يلاحقني طوال أيام حياتي. ما قصة تلك المكالمة التي رفض الرئيس أوباما إجراؤها؟
Thank you for that question.
حديث المجلة اليوم عن سوريا بعد العقوبات. هل توقع السلام مع إسرائيل؟ أنا جهينة خالدية. سوريا تقف عند لحظة استثنائية وسط تحديات أمنية وسياسية واقتصادية. من الرياض فتح الباب لتغيير محتمل، لكن بأسئلة صعبة: من سيدخل وما الثمن؟ دونالد ترامب يلتقي أحمد الشرع، العقوبات ترفع والعالم يترقب تحولا تاريخيا، لكن بشروط أمريكية صارمة: إما إصلاحات حقيقية أو خطر الانزلاق مجددا نحو الفوضى. البيت الأبيض وضع أول هذه الشروط صراحة: انضمام سوريا الجديدة إلى الاتفاقيات الإبراهيمية. شرط يفتح مباشرة على السؤال: هل تبنى شرعية سوريا على اتفاق سلام مع إسرائيل؟ هذه ليست المحاولة الأولى، سبقها الكثير، آخرها الوساطة الأميركية السرية في 2011 قادها السفير فريد وانتهت قبل أن تكتمل مع اندلاع الحرب. ضيفنا اليوم هو مهندس تلك الوساطة ليكشف لنا ما دار خلف الكواليس ويحمل رؤيته لمستقبل سوريا العائدة. حديث المجلة اليوم مع الدبلوماسي الأميركي السفير السابق فريد. سعادة السفير، أهلا بك في حديث المجلة.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with المجلة. I look forward to our conversation.
سعادة السفير، في الرياض التقى ترامب والشرع، رفعت العقوبات وتحدث العالم عن لحظة مفصلية، لكن أنت كتبت أنه ترامب فتح الباب. سؤال الأهم اليوم هو من سيدخل منه. لماذا أنت متحفظ على تأثير هذه اللحظة على مستقبل سوريا والمنطقة؟
Yeah, well, I try to temper my skepticism with a bit of optimism. I mean, the main development happened late last year with the disappearance of the Assad regime, a regime that had literally tortured Syria for over a half century. Okay, the end of that regime is a good development in and of itself. Okay, but it is still going to be extraordinarily difficult for the new administration in Syria, for President Ahmed al-Shara and his colleagues, to really stabilize the country and begin what will have to be a very long process of political and economic reconstruction. The barriers are very, very, very high. President Trump's announcement obviously is a step in the right direction. I understand the European Union is on the verge of doing exactly the same thing. These are good things, but I must say, if I have a degree of skepticism, it's based on a complete appreciation for how difficult the task is ahead of the new Syrian administration.
ما شهدته الرياض إضافة لاجتماع وزيري الخارجية السوري والأميركي بتركيا، ألم يختصر الطريق على سوريا الجديدة؟ ما هي أبرز المطالب الأمريكية مقابل الضمانات اللي قدمها الشرع؟
These are they are essential steps. And yes, at least in principle, they will shorten what will still be a long road for Syria's full recovery. And as you indicate, the United States still has some demands on President Shara, ridding Syria of all terrorist elements, including I must say some that still have some kind of an affiliation to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. There's a strong desire on the part of the American government that the new Syrian administration reflect a sense of inclusivity for all Syrians. I would put it this way, even though the administration has not put it in these exact words, I would say that what the United States is hoping for in Syria is a system based on citizenship, Syrian citizenship.
من بين أبرز المطالب الأمريكية المطروحة أولاً تنازل عن الجولان كأمر واقع، ثانياً الاعتراف أنه مزارع شبعا سورية لا لبنانية، طبعاً الارتباط ذلك باستمرار حزب الله. حضرتك لديك معلومات ومعطيات موثقة خاصة حول هذا الموضوع، أخبرنا ماذا قال لك بشار الأسد في هذا الإطار؟
Well, it's a very interesting question. The origin of this issue, the Sheba farms, goes back 25 years to 2000, when Israel in May 2000 withdrew from Lebanon. Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon should have meant the end of the Lebanese resistance, the end of Hezbollah. In a sense, Hezbollah had accomplished its political military mission. The Israelis were gone. But Hezbollah, in fact, did not want to give up its resistance status. It did not want to give up its armed status. So with the help of somebody in the Lebanese army, Mukhabarat, Hezbollah discovered this issue of the Sheba farms, where Lebanon, before 1967, had some discussions with Syria about the sovereignty of this thin strip of land on the Jolan. Those discussions were inconclusive. The land was left under Syrian administration as part of Syria. The Jolan was taken by Israel during the 1967 war. And between the years 1967 and 2000, Lebanon not once claimed that its territory was being occupied by Israeli forces in terms of the Sheba farms. It was administered as part of the occupied Jolan, and even UN forces would occasionally patrol in the area. Fast forward to the year 2011, the last day of February, I had been conducting a very quiet back-channel peace mediation between Israel and Syria. I had a meeting, a one-on-one meeting with President Bashar al-Assad, a meeting that lasted about 50 minutes. And this subject came up because I had to ask the president, if you succeed in reaching a treaty of peace and Israeli forces begin to withdraw from the Jolan, what do we do about the Sheba farms? Because Syria has said verbally that this land is Lebanese. Do we have to involve the Lebanese army in all of this? And President Assad said, Mr. Hoff, no, there is no role for Lebanon here. This land is Syrian. once we recover it from Israel, I'm open to the possibility of having some discussions with Lebanon about the issue of sovereignty. I'm open to the possibility of discussions. But let there be no doubt, this is Syrian territory. Okay, so perhaps the new government in Syria will find it in its interests to make the same statement, thereby helping the government of Lebanon do away once and for all with this pretense of the Lebanese resistance.
يعني حساسية ملف شبعا وسلاح حزب الله تتقاطع مع واقع لبناني هش، لا إعمار، لا استقرار اقتصادي، وهدنة لا تبدو دائمة. برأيك هل تتيح المتغيرات السورية والإقليمية فرصة جديدة للبنان؟
I think developments in Syria overall give Lebanon, and particularly the new administration in Lebanon, a degree of flexibility on these matters that it never had before. For as long as I have been working on these issues, and it's been many years, the assumption was always that Lebanon cannot take any step at all with respect to Israel without the permission of Syria. And Syria's permission was always very hard or impossible to get. I think now, for example, there are persistent reports of Israeli-Syrian discussions taking place, perhaps in the Emirates. It's not clear to me if these are discussions between officials or if this is a so-called track two diplomatic effort between former officials, former military officers. But the fact that this is taking place and is being widely reported, I think gives a degree of almost unprecedented flexibility to the government of Lebanon. For example, to pursue a formal armistice with Israel. The armistice, the 1949 armistice, is upheld by the Taif agreement. So Lebanon perhaps can move in that direction. But in any event, I think what has to happen first is that the terms of the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel must be observed rigorously by both sides.
يعني هذه الحدود لم تهدأ يوما لا بريا ولا بحريا سعادة سفير، وأنت كنت أول من قدم مقترح أميركي لترسيم الحدود البحرية بال2012، عرف لاحقا بخط هوف، وطبعا واجه تحفظ لبناني. بال2022 صار الاتفاق الفعلي بس التوترات استمرت. هل ترى أنه ملفات ترسيم البحرية والبرية ستفتح وتحسم بشكل كامل؟
First of all, I must say that when I proposed my compromise back in 2011, 2012, whenever it was, there was strong support from the Lebanese government for implementing this compromise. Unfortunately, a series of events took place that really destabilized the Lebanese government and prevented the prime minister at the time, Najib Mikati, from submitting the compromise to a vote in the cabinet. But there was strong support for it. I'm happy that with the passage of 10 years, an agreement was reached. I think in some respects the lines that were agreed to in 2022 from Lebanon's point of view are definitely an improvement on the so-called Hof line. But on the other hand, 10 years were lost. And these were lost years that Lebanon could really not afford to lose, given the economic situation.
فشل يلاحقني طوال أيام حياتي، هكذا وصفت ما أسميته الفرصة الضائعة لتحقيق السلام بين سوريا وإسرائيل. هل كنت تتخيل أنه بيوم من الأيام يطرح في السلام مع إسرائيل علنا من قبل رئيس سوري؟ وهل يعني باتت استعادة الشرعية الدولية لسوريا مرهونة فعلا باتفاق سلام؟
You know, thank you for that. Thank you for that question, because this is something that I am beginning to rethink, and I have not come yet to a firm conclusion. When my peace mediation collapsed in 2011 because of President Bashar al-Assad's decision to go to war against the Syrian people, to use unspeakable violence against his own people. When that collapsed, my conclusion was Assad has finally handed the Golan to Israel. This issue is finished after decades of American efforts to mediate a peace agreement that would return to Syria all of the land lost during the 1967 war, that this was over, that Assad's failure to use decency and diplomacy in dealing with Syrian citizens basically closed the issue forever. Now I am beginning to wonder if my impression from 14 years ago is still correct. I think we have the possibility that the kind of governance in Syria will emerge that may make it possible for peace discussions at some point to resume between Israel and Syria. Now, will Israel be inclined, to give up the Golan under any circumstances? I would think not. I think if I were advising the government of Syria on all of this, I would say at some point, particularly, when Israeli violence inside Syria stops, you can commit yourself to pursuing Syria's objectives with respect to Israel. But I would think that, for Syria to be able to think in those terms, the first requirement would be the full restoration of the 1974 agreement on disengagement, with Israeli forces pulling back onto the Golan in an area consistent with the provisions of that 1974 agreement. That I think is the starting point for the possibility of Syria and Israel perhaps reaching an armistice agreement of their own, and perhaps in the fullness of time moving beyond that to discussions of peace and normalization.
إذا ما الذي يختلف اليوم ما بين خط 4 حزيران 1967 وخط 7 ديسمبر 2024؟ سلام اللي كان سابقا مقابل الأرض ثم مقابل فك ارتباط استراتيجي مع إيران وحزب الله، اليوم ما ثمنه؟ وما هي فرص السلام في ظل استمرار القصف الإسرائيلي على سوريا؟
You know what Israel was interested in back in the 2010-2011 timeframe when I was doing the mediation. What Israel was interested in was a Syria that would reorient itself fundamentally in terms of its relationships in the region. Syria that would break military ties to Iran, Hezbollah, and at the time Hamas. In return for this fundamental strategic reorientation, Israel was willing to consider withdrawing its forces over time, 3 to 5 years, something like that, back to the line of June 4th, 1967, which we were in the process of defining in great detail. I think if a process can resume between Syria and Israel, again, Israel would be most interested in trying to determine what kind of a Syria are we dealing with. I would think Israel and the Israeli government would be celebrating the fact that Iran and Hezbollah are now gone from Syria, but it is not. And I think Israel, I don't know, perhaps under a different government in the future, could choose to reconsider how it might try to relate to the new administration in Syria. My sense is that we are probably a long way away from Israel seriously considering a trade-off of land for peace with Syria. We may never get there. And I cannot predict for you how important the recovery of the Golan will be to the new administration in Syria.
طب إذا كان الجولان خارج الحسابات والضربات الإسرائيلية مستمرة، لماذا أصلاً قد تفكر سوريا وإسرائيل باتفاق سلام؟ ما الذي ممكن أن يكسبوا كل من الطرفين؟
I think for Syria in particular, being able to do away with the prospect of armed conflict with any of the neighbors, particularly Israel, is going to be an important aspect of rebuilding the country. When you think about the sheer size of the investment, external investment that has to be made in Syria to reconstruct the country after 14 years of systematic destruction, I think people who are going to be making investments, loans, grants will want to know that the things they are helping to build will not be destroyed through warfare.
عد بنا إلى البداية، كيف بدأت مهمة الوساطة عام 2009 ضمن فريق جورج ميتشل؟ ما كانت أبرز الرسائل التي التقطتها من دمشق وتل أبيب في تلك المرحلة؟
In the early days of my mediation, I must say the mediation was rather one-sided. On the Syrian side, my main counterpart was the Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim. Muallim, when he had been ambassador in the United States, had demonstrated very early his own interest in trying to come to terms with Israel in a way that would recover for Syria all of the territory lost during the June 1967 war. So Muallim was a very strong advocate for seeing what might be possible. On the Israeli side, initially I got not much response at all. There seemed to be a predisposed belief that Syria was not really interested in peace with Israel. We had a bit of a breakthrough in 2010 when there was a key meeting between Senator John Kerry and Bashar al-Assad. Kerry had developed a good relationship with Assad, and during this meeting, Assad indicated that he understood fully what would be required of Syria to get its land recovered via a peace treaty. And Assad authorized Foreign Minister Muallim to write down some of this understanding, and that was eventually shared with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And in multiple meetings I had with Netanyahu, I tried my best to convince him that Assad was showing signs of seriousness in pursuing this. But the real breakthrough came, I think, when I was able, with the invaluable help of Special Envoy Mitchell, especially on the Syrian side, I was able to obtain the agreement of both sides to allow me to conduct this mediation on the basis of a draft treaty of peace, something that I drafted, and then spent the next few months shuttling back and forth between Damascus and Jerusalem, discussing potential changes with both sides. And we were getting reasonably close to a fully agreed document. There were no leaks by either side, which I think is a pretty good indicator of seriousness. We were moving forward, and then, unfortunately, within 2 weeks, the shooting started in Syria, and it didn't stop. It didn't stop for the next 14 years, and that ended a very promising effort.
تقول أنه في مكالمة واحدة كان يمكن أن تنقذ المسار. ما قصة تلك المكالمة التي رفض الرئيس أوباما إجراؤها؟ هل كانت فعلا لتغير شيئا؟ ومن عارض عودتك إلى سوريا؟
Well, I was doing my mediation while President Obama was the president. Where I encountered difficulty was when the shooting began in Syria in mid to late March 2011. My partner in the White House, Dennis Ross, and I basically appealed to the President of the United States to pick up the telephone, call Bashar al-Assad, and say, look, there's been a promising peace mediation going on. You've been an essential part of it. But Mr. President, unless the shooting stops, unless these disputes are resolved in a peaceful manner, this mediation is finished. Unfortunately, the President Obama declined to do that. I offered to return to Syria to have another one-on-one meeting with Assad, if possible, to deliver the same message. The president declined to support that. I don't necessarily believe that President Obama would have been able to convince Assad to stop the shooting. I simply regretted at the time that we did not take the chance. So again, it's one of these things that we'll never really know the answer to.
نعم. أود أن أعود معك إلى 2011 تحديداً إلى اجتماعك المفصلي مع بشار الأسد كما ذكرت في كتابك Reaching for the Heights، يعني لقاء مباشر، نقاش مطول ووثيقة مكتوبة على الطاولة عن اتفاق سلام مقابل فك ارتباط استراتيجي عن إيران وحزب الله. هل كان الأسد مستعداً فعلاً لهذه القطيعة؟ هل كان يدرك ما الذي يعد به وكيف انهار كل شيء؟
Yeah, my big reservation coming away from that 50-minute meeting with Assad had to do with what he was telling me about Iran and Hezbollah and how they would react to an announcement that an agreement had been reached between Syria and Israel. He basically said, look, Iran will go along with this because Iran understands this is in Syria's interests. And he said Hezbollah will go along with this. Hezbollah will evolve into a regular Lebanese political party. And I have already instructed, or he didn't use the word instructed. He said, I have already told the president of Lebanon to prepare his negotiating team. Because once we have an agreement, Lebanon will be next. Now, I was not about to debate the president of Syria about his evaluation of the Iranian and Hezbollah reaction to all of this if an agreement should be reached. I thought that their reaction would be very, 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 very negative, and perhaps present some security issues for the president of Syria himself. But then again, my attitude was I certainly can't control everything. This is something the president of Syria is going to have to deal with if we get to this point. But I must say, just to be fair and balanced about all of this, even after my meeting with Netanyahu, even after everything seemed to be falling into place, I still had a fundamental question about whether either or both of these leaders might fail in the end to follow through. Right? We had precedent on the Israeli side in the case of former Prime Minister Ehud Barak, of an Israeli leader at the last minute saying, I just really don't have the political domestic support to move forward with all of this.
تقصد الاجتماع الذي رتبته ورعته أمريكا بين إسرائيل وسوريا، اجتماع ويست فيرجينيا اللي اعتذر عنه باراك بمجرد وصوله.
On the airplane when he arrived, Martin Indyk got on the Israeli plane. Prime Minister Barak invited him on board. Martin, please sit down. And then he said, Martin, I just can't do this. And Indyk said, Prime Minister, what are you talking about? The American president has put together this big meeting in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. He did it at your request. What do you mean you can't do it? He said, well, I just don't think I've got the political support in the Knesset and in the public for reaching a treaty of peace with Syria. So, as I did my own mediation a decade later, I had all of this in mind, whether or not the political situation of the two leaders would actually permit them to go ahead and sign an agreement and begin to implement it. And unfortunately, we'll never really know the answer to that question.
لكن نتنياهو ما زال في السلطة، هل يمكن أنه يسمح بالتهدئة أم بفضل فعلا دور قائد الحرب هربا من المحاسبة؟
Well, some Israelis I know say that it is very important politically for Prime Minister Netanyahu to preserve his status as the wartime leader of Israel. The theory being that if Israel is no longer at war, a very detailed examination can be made of the events of October 7th, 2023, who was responsible for Israel's lack of preparedness on that fateful day. And people who make this argument say that the prime minister knows or suspects that he will be held as the person principally responsible. And therefore, he is arguing that it is not the time to do this kind of detailed inquiry as long as Israel is still at war. And I am the wartime prime minister of Israel.
نعود لبشار الأسد، يعني بعد سنوات من لقاءاتك المتكررة معه، هل تخيلت سوريا من دونه؟ هل أصلاً ترى في خلعه نهاية مرحلة فقط، أم كما وصفت بأنه حدث استراتيجي هو الأهم في الشرق الأوسط منذ عقود؟
Yeah, I confess that like everybody else, except perhaps for Assad and his Russian and Iranian supporters, I was surprised by his sudden removal from power. I think what and I'll just speak personally, what I did not understand, what I did not grasp was the extent to which the absolute corruption and kleptocracy of this regime had infected the Syrian army itself. And yes, I expected that perhaps for the balance of my life, Bashar al-Assad would be the president of Syria.
ورحل الأسد، لكن برأيك هل راهنت روسيا على الحصان الخطأ؟ وماذا بقي لها اليوم من هذا الرهان؟
I don't know that Russia necessarily backed the wrong horse. Only in this sense. Bashar al-Assad and the support of Bashar al-Assad was an extraordinarily important point, a political point for Vladimir Putin to make to his domestic audience. What he was saying, in essence, was, we have saved Bashar al-Assad from American regime change attempts. This fellow Assad is nothing particularly special, but we have saved him. And this is the strongest possible indicator that Russia is back as a great power in the world. And for a Russian audience, this is an extremely powerful point for a Russian leader to be able to make. So Assad was useful for many years, at least starting in 2015 when Russia first intervened militarily in Syria. He was extraordinarily important for Vladimir Putin's ability to make a key political point to his domestic audience.
وهل انتهى دور روسيا في سوريا فعلياً أم أنه لديها من النفوذ لتعود بطريقة جديدة؟
I'm not sure what kind of a role Russia is going to play in Syria. I don't know that anything's decided. I would hope that the Syrian government would maintain a demand that Bashar al-Assad be returned to Syria to face justice. I think this would probably be too much for Vladimir Putin to consider, because it would run the risk of undoing all the statements he's made in the past about Russia's return to great power status.
ماذا عن تركيا؟ يعني اللاعب المحوري في سوريا اليوم، هل كانت جزء من صفقة أوسع بين واشنطن وتل أبيب لم يكشف عنها بعد؟
I would say I think there has probably been good communication between Presidents Trump and Erdogan about the situation in Syria. Erdogan was one of the key players in convincing President Trump to lift sanctions and to give this new administration in Syria a chance to move forward in addressing the basic needs of the Syrian people. The relationship between Turkey and Israel over Syria is something else entirely. And who knows? It may be that the new Syrian administration can play a mediating role between these two countries. Israeli political leaders have made some rather harsh statements about the Turkish role in Syria, and I think this contributes to a degree of tension now between the United States and Israel over these events. Not only does President Trump have a good working relationship with President Erdogan, but Turkey is, at the end of the day, it's a NATO ally of the United States. And I think the view of the Trump administration, certainly the view of President Trump, is that overall Turkey has had a positive role to play in Syria since the downfall of the Assad regime.
سعادة السفير فريدريك هوف، شكرا لك لهذا اللقاء في حديث المجلة حول سوريا بعد العقوبات. شكرا.
It's been an honor to be with Majella Talk, and thank you for the opportunity.